think he may not be on yet, but I think we're ready to go. So yeah, today's actually pretty exciting. The topic is going to be closing your first multifamily syndication, and we have Maple and RYDON here, who recently closed on a property in Louisville, Kentucky. And I think part of what I'm looking to get out of this is, for those of us who are also trying to follow that roadmap to getting involved in syndications on the operator side. It's good to see, others who, have gone through the journey and are successful doing it. And it's also not just about, the how it's done, but just the preparation that goes into it before you even see that deal. So looking forward to learn about that, as well as, some of the specifics of the deal itself. But again, it's more, to learn and like anything else, you get inspired by seeing others that you have worked or spend time with do what it is that you're looking for. So what we'll do here, for those, I want to make sure that I give everybody an opportunity to introduce yourself. I usually read bios, but we don't want to do that with 4 people. That'd be a little boring. So let me start by bringing each one of you 4 on the stage and introducing yourself. I'll start first with Gonzalo Tronosky of Maple Capital Partners. Hi, Gonzalo. I'll let you introduce yourself and give a little bit of bio.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. First of all, for having us on. We're very excited to kind of tell our story of this current deal that we just recently excitingly closed on a little while ago. So a little quick about my background. I come from the civil engineering background, so I'm a licensed professional engineer. My education is basically civil engineering for highway infrastructure, buildings, things like that. I got into multifamily about 2.5 years ago. And basically, I'm the other half of Mark for Maple Capital Partners. I'm focusing more on the asset management side. So with my background of construction and engineering, it kind of fits me a little bit better with more of the contractor, the CapEx budgeting and things like that. So I take that role happily at Maple, and Mark shares the other side of the tasks that are related to real estate in general. So that's a little bit about my background, and thanks.
Excellent. So next up, and by the way, it's not a requisite that you have a Carolina connection, but it does help, of course. Gonzalo, who was originally living up in New Jersey, recently relocated out to outside of the Charlotte area. So he is now actually a South Carolina resident. But
yeah, so I was in New Jersey for about 17 years, and yeah, recently, just around 5.5 months, pretty much packed up my family, my kids, the dogs, everybody, and just moved down here to good old South Carolina, right outside Charlotte, about 15 minutes, and living the good old life, I guess, down here.
All right, so next up, we'll introduce Mark Wisey, also of Maple Capital Partners.
Yeah, so first of all, hello, everybody. Honored to be here, and thanks for the introduction there, Jerry. As Gonzalo mentioned, I'm not going to belabor the point, but we partnered basically because of our complementary skill set. So whereas Gonzalo comes from engineering, I come from the financial market side of things, so managing portfolios for high net worth individuals. And that's kind of, I guess, leads into kind of what I bring to the table in terms of capital raising and underwriting. It's most of what I do for my W-2, which kind of translates into the syndication realm. Started off in residential, like a lot of people in multifamily. Met Gonzalo at one of these type events, partnered up and started scaling our portfolio. And pretty soon we were, had our eyes on the larger multifamily. So that's what we're up to now, and that's where we're at.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Mark. Next up, Ryan Sarkar from RYDON Asset Management.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry, for having us on. My name is Ryan. I am actually based out of the Buffalo, New York area, so pretty far upstate and away from most everybody else. You'll notice Don, he's my dad, so we've been working together for about 6 or so years now. He's been in this for a lot longer than I have been, but I've been working at this for around 6 years, and this is our 3rd deal closing together as a team. our first syndication. So I like to think that I bring to the table some of the underwriting type things, some of the technical aspects of it. I'm a mechanical engineer during the day, so I'm pretty used to looking at numbers, trying to crunch things together, see how that type of puzzle fits. So I like to look at those portions of the deal, as well as I actually enjoy this type of connections, marketing type thing. Although I don't do it nearly as much, I do like to. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And now next up, Don Sarkar from RYDON Asset Management.
Yeah. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for having us on, and nice to meet all you guys and talk to you guys. So yeah, I'm really thrilled to work with this team. Obviously, I'm thrilled to work with my son too. It's not often that a lot of people get to work with one of their kids or one of their children in a field that they love, you know. So I've been doing real estate for probably about 25 years, and I have a background in plumbing and pipe fitting for quite a few decades. So I have a lot of experience with piping and water leakage, and you know, a lot of your basic stuff that you deal with every day with apartment houses. And since I did all the work myself, I'm kind of thinking about something else right now and kind of laughing about it, but since I did all the work myself the first probably 10-15 years, it was a pleasure to get a little bit more education, buy out of town, be able to have a manager, be able to manage the manager, and it's really great. But I do appreciate all the work that I did myself on these properties years ago. It just gives you a real good hands-on approach, and you kind of know where the contractors are coming from. Since if I've done all the work myself, it's like there's no surprises when a contractor calls. So I kind of like that. That's about it.
And of course, your connection to Carolinas is you have a property in Hickory, right? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we love the Carolinas.
That's awesome. Good. So, you know, excited. Before we jump into the specific closing that you guys have, kind of want to, just learn a little bit more about the partnerships between the two groups, right? First, Mark and Gonzalo, you mentioned how you met at events like this. What's the time frame of that? How long ago did you meet? And then at what point did you decide, like, hey, we're going to work together?
Oh, you want me to take this?
I was just gonna say, mention bigger pockets, because I think that's how I kind of sent you a text, right? Like what, 3 years ago or something?
Yeah. It's gonna sound like a dating thing. We met online. We met on Bigger Pockets, and I think one of us had commented on one of the local forums there, and kind of mentioned that they're local, and so we decided to meet up and learn a little bit more about each other's backgrounds. We both were kind of just starting out. I think we both kind of had a couple of properties. He was doing flips, and me on the buy and hold side. And so we had a lot of the same goals when we first met. And like I mentioned before, complementary skill sets. And so we kind of hit it off, and we decided to start off at the time what we thought was big, but looking back, it was quite small in the grand scheme of things. And I think that's really good for anybody looking for partners, is start off small and really take your time. These are long-term relationships you're getting into. And just like marriage, it's really easy to get into, but a lot harder to get out of. So, take your time in vetting that person, really get to know them and what gets them excited, and, their personality, and whether or not that meshes with you.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's a great thing you brought that up, because I think on the meetup that William was at not too many days ago, this question was brought up, and it's very important, partnering with somebody that you trust, goals align, things like that. So starting on that small triplex that we did, so many years ago, was kind of like a good getting our feet wet first to see kind of each other worked out. We did kind of a burr on that. We held that property in Newark, New Jersey, but it kind of gave us a taste of how how we complement each other on different trades. And from that point on, it was like, okay, let's move now into a little bit bigger. It's hard to scale this stuff. Our ultimate goal is financial independence. helping people out, helping investors out, diversifying, mostly in multifamily real estate. So we then took that jump into attending some meetups on multifamily in New Jersey about 2 years ago. And from that point to now, it kind of prepared us, the networking that we did, the educational background and seminars that we kind of learned throughout the way, really set a foothold in closing this 32 unit and really gave us that confidence that said, okay, we're now ready. We know a lot. Let's do it. And that's how we kind of reached our goal.
So now, Ryan and Don, we obviously know how you met each other, but because give us the backstory of how you decided to, work together. Because obviously, as great as it sounds, father-son, there's always, interesting dynamics and those type of relationships. So how did that come about where you decided to finally work and do this together?
Well, could I take this, Ryan?
Sure.
So one of the properties I had in Middletown, New York, where I pretty much did all the hands-on stuff, including leasing, Ryan would help me a lot with the apartment turns. So, he helped with that. And then he helped with the spreadsheets. And before you know it, I was getting tired of doing all this work at the property all the time. It was really not that bad. It was pretty much once a week, but it was every single week I had to do something. And then of course the spreadsheets and leasing and all that. And then we decided that we wanted to get more education, and the training that I paid for included a free person. So I said, hey, would you like to come? And then I'll let him take over from there.
Yeah. When I was helping with those turns, I think it was during college for me, but after that I had moved away across the country to Colorado. And after some time, he had asked me if we wanted to maybe pursue this a little bit more and actually really go for it. So we ended up going to essentially one of those guru boot camps, and it was all about buying in emerging markets, buying out of state. And I think we really took it to heart that this is something that we can do, that if all of these other people in the room are doing it with little to no experience and just learning from other people, learning from reading, from podcasts, all that kind of stuff, why can't we do the same? So with his experience and prior knowledge, actually running a smaller multi close by, we ended up taking that and really jumping from something close to us in New York State down to Hickory outside of Charlotte. So that was our first really cutting our teeth at out of state ownership, out of state working asset management, working with the property manager, multiple property managers on that property, and really learning how to run something that you're not boots on the ground and trusting who you do have on the ground. So in terms of our relationship, it's been good. We've worked pretty well. I do think our skills complement each other. I'm a little more on the tech side. He's a little more on the hands-on side. And I guess the funniest part about it is when we're talking all the time, constantly through texts and calls, but it's pretty much only real estate.
That's great. That's awesome. So, what we'll do, we'll jump into, I'm going to actually bring up the on my screen here. If you guys can see can you see the offering?
Yep.
We see it on our end.
Okay, great. So here's the property here, 32 unit in Louisville, Kentucky. And why don't we start with you, Mark? Give a little bit about, after you had the opportunity to, put the LOI, go after this property. At what point did you decide to reach out and work with another group, another partnership?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was fairly early on that we knew that we were going to have to bring in somebody else. So just taking a step back, as Gonzalo mentioned earlier, this was really kind of the culmination of 2 years specifically focused on multifamily in terms of education and hands-on experience. We had co-sponsored on a couple of deals with a mentor at the time, and that really gave us the confidence to be able to go out and strike out on our own as far as making offers on properties. So we had a couple of false starts actually about a year prior to this. We learned a ton through those. So I would say, when you're going through tough times, as we're all bound to do in building this business, it's just, take a step back and take the long view and try to view it from the lens of what can I learn from this experience. So all of those lessons kind of went into this acquisition. Now back to your question of when did we know that we were going to need a helping hand? It was really the capital raise, as well as kind of the out-of-state nature of this asset, that kind of told us that we needed to bring in somebody that was a little bit more experienced in managing out of state. We had the fortune of meeting Don. I don't think we had met Ryan in person at that point, but we had met Don, I think a year prior, going to some of these meetups in person back when that was a thing. And, had known a little bit about his story and felt really confident and really good about that we would mesh well in terms of our skill set. And so we, ran the deal past them, said, hey, is this the kind of asset that you would care on? We know that this is not your target market of the Carolinas, but we can, get you comfortable with the market. Do you like the deal itself? And that's kind of how we started the relationship.
Awesome. So I guess, Ryan, I'll direct this at you. Really quickly, 32 units. What was the price, the closing price on this one?
$2,475,000.
Okay, and the total raise was how much?
Approximately 1.1.
Okay. So now, obviously, Mark, you know Gonzalo, but you never worked before. So now they reach out to you, I guess, what is some of the exciting, things that you think about, as well as some of the concerns that, working with a different group?
So we had, like Mark just mentioned, I had actually never met either Mark or Gonzalo in person. It was my dad that had met them at a meetup. So it was interesting getting this email from them. I mean, we get, every once in a while, somebody that we've met does say, hey, would you mind taking a look at this for us? And, most people in this business, almost everybody that you meet, are willing to help throw a hand out and see what they can do to help somebody else. So of course, sure, let's underwrite it. Let's see what they've got here. And after underwriting quite a bit over the past couple of years, you don't always see properties that come up with numbers that you want to see. So it was pretty refreshing to see that. So we were definitely excited when they had found something. And I don't think it was right away that he said, at least I don't quite remember. I don't think it was the first email or two where he was like, are you guys interested in this? It was more just, hey, can you guys take a look at this? See what you think. What can you add to this? What would you say should be different? What do you like about the underwriting that I've done so far? What has to be adjusted in terms of management, in terms of CapEx, turns, everything else? What can be changed? How can we scrutinize this more and make sure that it's underwritten properly?
Right.
So I think overall, I was, just trying to be helpful at the time. I didn't expect much to come of it. And then over the coming weeks, when we actually continued to move forward with them, and something came of it where they had mentioned, do you want to hop on a call and talk about this more and really see where it goes? It was definitely exciting. I was skeptical of it actually getting as far as it did, but happy to see what happened.
Can you guys see the screen here? I'm sharing the executive summary.
Yep.
Yep.
So, I'll give a little bit of my own prior, I guess, knowledge of knowing, you guys before this. And I'll direct this question to Gonzalo. I look at this and the colors and Mark and Gonzalo Maple put out a newsletter, and you've been doing that, for over a year. And I think one thing I want to make sure to stress is how much work you two have done before this opportunity came, whether it's newsletters, is getting things ready, due diligence and checklists and things like that. You want to just give a little bit of insight of how that helped when this opportunity came.
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned before, this is not like we just kind of woke up, and the next morning and kind of this deal fell on our lap, right? It really took this long to really network with the folks. This deal came through from one of our network contacts. So throughout that process, we developed that relationship with that person. We kept in contact with that person. And throughout this whole entire time, we were also, educating ourselves, searching for deals. Our actual target market is Nashville, Tennessee. So that's kind of like the area that we focused on. We took a couple of trips there, met brokers, visited properties, submitted LOIs to Nashville, and then interesting enough, a deal popped up in Louisville, not too far, a very similar market, it's a southern market, very similar style of property. So when it did come to us, we kind of was like, all right, very interesting. Let's start investigating Louisville a little more. We actually took a trip out there before we really sent out the LOI and got accepted. We wanted to kind of tour the property. We really loved that it was a townhome style property, which for us, it was very desirable, just seeing how COVID has kind of impacted people as far as their own private entrances, a little more privacy. So once it did fall in our lap, we were very interested with the deal. We did invest a lot of time up front to get to know the market. And I'm glad we did, because at the end of the day, we were able to share that information with Ryan and Don as far as our visit, what we saw out there. And we got very excited with this property from day one, from our first visit out there. So
If I can just add one thing as far as looking at this deal, like I mentioned earlier, we kind of looked at a few different target markets. We had a few, like I said before, false starts. So we started off looking much closer to home in kind of Eastern Pennsylvania. And that was our first out of state experience of building a team and looking at deals and things like that. And then we looked at Nashville, and Nashville, as everybody knows, it makes all these top lists. So it gets a lot of attention. There's a really big audience for that market, as with some other Southeastern markets. But all of the skills that we had to put to use in evaluating Louisville came from, building a team locally in those other markets, putting property managers through kind of our vetting process, looking at different submarkets, doing mystery shopping. All of these were things that we didn't just, come up with. These were things that we learned from actually doing them and applying them in other markets.
great point. Yeah.
So I'll put this next one out to Don. Don, you mentioned, vast experience that you have in the industry. A lot of it, obviously, early on, for most of it, doing it yourself. You got Ryan on. You guys are working together. Now, moving up into a larger size property like this, you're working with another group. I guess, how did you guys do as far as managing the process of not overlapping, or how did you guys communicate with each other, and how did that work out?
So it's been great working with this team, with Mark and Gonzalo. It really everyone has a different skill set, and it's just we lay out different tasks for each other, and we just kind of work together. And I got to tell you too, in reference to a question you brought up earlier, Ryan and I needed to have partners as well. It's a team sport. We could not do it by ourselves. We were basically creating equity, but we weren't doing it fast enough. And that's how we went from a 16 unit down in Hickory to a 32 unit. But it took years, took 3.5 years to create that equity to get into a bigger property. So, partnering up was awesome for us, and, being able to divide up tasks and keep on them is great. It's working out well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just to dive a little deeper into how we kind of did that, is we did look at our skill sets initially, but we did a lot of overlap because we wanted to make sure that we were, as you mentioned, and this was our first syndication. So not only was our money on the line, but a lot of other people's money was on the line, or is on the line. So we actually did take a lot of extra time, and multiple of us went through many of the same tasks just to make sure that somebody didn't miss something, especially during the underwriting phase. At this point, we have kind of segmented everything off a little bit, CapEx and turns and accounting, all those types of things, everything that goes into asset management, working with the project, working with the property manager. And another one of our team members who's actually on here had brought up the idea of using Asana, Miguel. So that's been what we've been using for a couple weeks now. But prior to that, we were just going through email and phone call and text and just saying, okay, who's going to take this week? Who's going to take this next week? and just making sure everything got done. We had, Excel checklist, to-do list. Mark was up on top of the Excel list the entire time. It was
Yeah.
just checklists upon checklists, making sure that nothing got missed.
Yeah, it's a great point. The technology actually was going to be one of my questions, because I know from even using the drone in your videos, and you guys did a great job of doing that. I don't know if Miguel's on, he can definitely jump on if he wants to chat at any point. For anybody else, while I'll do another round of questions, you feel free to drop in the chat. I know Tom just asked about how you guys built your investor database. Mark responded by starting off as friends and family. I think that's probably a common, denominator for anybody. And then as times goes on, your strategy and your exposure to other people will build up your database. So I'll look for any questions. I'll give, I have a few myself, but Mark, I'll start with you. As the process, right? You're now under contract. You guys are working together. Now it's, like, get this across, whatever it is, you're out of due diligence. You're moving forward to the closing line. This whole process, you prepared, you've been reading, you're studying. Like, what did you find was easier than expected and harder than expected?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think on the easier side, I really thought that capital raising was going to be more of a bear. But honestly, all of the work that we had done up until that point, talking to friends and family, talking to the people that we have built this relationship with over the past few years here, as we've kind of put it out there that we're doing multifamily, that's sort of, built to this point where we're now coming to them, and we don't have to go through the whole talk track of what is multifamily, why this is such an attractive asset class or anything like that. It's more of, okay, this is the conversation that we had prior, and this was the type of opportunity that you expressed interest in, and this, this deal meets that need. So I would say, I wish I had started earlier, frankly, as far as documenting or kind of putting out in the world what we were up to. But that being said, it's never too early to start, whether you're starting on the residential side, whatever kind of platform you're on, social media wise, just put it out there. This is what I'm working on. This is how I'm spending my weekend, that kind of thing. Because that all builds credibility. That all kind of builds confidence from people who may be watching. But so that was easier than I thought it would be. The capital raising, just being that we had a ton of conversations coming up to this point. And a lot of people knew that this deal was kind of coming by the time that we had it under contract. As far as tougher than what we expected, I think dealing with a lender was a little bit tougher. And I would say more so than that, dealing with legal entities, just because, the nature of syndication, there are multiple entities involved. And so you just really want to make sure that you work with your syndication attorney and understand what's going to be required of you. Because while, typically you'll have 30 days to do your due diligence and then 30 days to close, it's kind of like, I guess, a safe number to go with. That sounds like a long time. It's really not, to do all the things that you have to do prior to closing. So you want to have as much figured out ahead of time with some of your team members, like the syndication attorney, so that when you do have to go and create the bank account, you have to structure the entities. You have all of that laid out for you.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. So, now move a little bit ahead, obviously, as you're ticking the clock, you're moving towards closing, but, and the underwriting's already gone through, you've done due diligence, creating a budget. Gonzalo, put this question to you, talk about some of the things that for CapEx, for example, the variables that go into that. How did you put together your budget on this deal?
Yeah, I definitely want to bring Don on the stage if he wants to chime in, because I did work very closely with Don. Me and him are kind of working side by side and kind of in the initial stages trying to develop some sort of capital expenditure budgets, what we needed to kind of set aside in order to kind of hit the ground running once we closed. So how much were the exterior improvements? What was that? What did that look like? Same thing with the interiors. What are we looking at for upgrades to kind of hit those rent numbers that we're projecting? that's heavily depending on whatever return we provide to the investors, those rent bumps were really important. So we wanted to make sure we had a very solid number. So Don and I worked together with definitely getting multiple quotes for pricing, getting very high level pricing. Doesn't mean necessarily that we're gonna go with these contractors, but we really need to get an idea of what prices were in the Louisville market, because obviously we're from different parts of the East Coast, and pricing for different type of repairs might vary from definitely Newark, New Jersey to Louisville. So we needed to get ourselves familiar with what type of expenses were associated with, you know, painting the exterior of the buildings, things like replacing gutters and roofing, it was needed. So we got quotes. We determined the due diligence phase really gave us an understanding of what the condition of the property was. So we can go in there and be like, all right, we need to do this, 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 and this. Let's get quotes. And then let's start really building our CapEx budget and see where we land. Do we need this? Do we not need this? So it was a very great process that we went through, and everybody really had their input. Miguel had input on different things. So it was great to have a multitude of opinions from everybody in order to really narrow down on what that CapEx number would be. And I'm sure, Don, you can add to that for sure.
And I think one of the things to add on what Gonzalo was talking about is we also brought the whole team in, not only on the cost and what items, but how is that going to drive our value, the value add? And that was the big thing. So we constantly went back and forth on, do we need this or do we need this? And which one's more important? Which one's going to give that curb appeal right off the bat, get the tenants in the door, keep them happy, be able to raise the rent and have happy tenants. So I think that's
correct.
And I know you, you know, for knowing a little bit about this story, and actually, you know, obviously you guys mentioned this before. You also had other co-GPs, two others in this deal. One of which is on the call, Miguel. I'm going to let Miguel come on and answer a question. Miguel, are you there?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, excellent, man. So one thing that I know that you guys did, which was there was multiple trips made out there. One of which you went out as what do they call it? Shoppers, secret shoppers, right? Where you went to nearby complexes and built your comps from visiting those other properties in the area. And I know, Miguel, you were part of that. Tell me how that helped in valuing this deal.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Is that I went out there and I met them to kind of support some of this mystery shopping. By the way, Gonzalo and Mark set the hardest schedule known to man. Okay, I mean, they had every hour laid out. I think only my wife sets more or a harder schedule than they did, but we were out there pretty much every hour on hour. We were dividing and conquering, but we went out and we shot 15 properties. I feel like it was 15 was the overall number, but yeah, so 15 properties in a span of like 2 or 3 days. So they had us, Mark and Gonzalo had me running all over the place, meeting people, introducing ourselves like we were going to move into the area. It was an awesome experience. I got to learn a lot about the market. We did go down and on top of doing a bunch of work, we did do some R&R and got to enjoy the area and really see the growth that was happening down there. It was really impressive coming from the East Coast to actually look what I thought was in the middle of nowhere, but to see how fast the market was growing, to see how artsy and modern it was, and just to confirm all the research that like RYDON and Maple had done on why this was an amazing property. So mystery shopping, seeing the price differences right away kind of, for me, just opened my eyes in terms of ensuring that this was a really, really great deal, like Ryan mentioned earlier.
It's funny that if you don't mind me chiming in real quick, and Garrett kind of asked in the chat why we liked this market not being either by primary markets, but even the following trips, we toured additional properties. And I think that was in the total of 15. But funny story about it was we literally walked or Ubered to every single property. So that not only did we like the actual market of Louisville itself, but our little submarket, Hikes Point, we got to know very, very well because we were at our property. But if we saw another property that was only 3/4 of a mile, 1 mile, maybe a mile and a quarter, mile and a half away, we would actually walk to that property, take that time to walk there, comparing notes about what we had talked about with contractors and other people that were at the property on our way there. So there was, like he said, there was literally not a moment of downtime, and it was all very productive, and it was very helpful to find out exactly, you know, just like any city, our block can be great, but one block away, there could be some issues. And it was really nice to see those portions of the submarket doing that.
And it also is important to see the type of work that you're doing as out-of-state investors, right? Because you have to familiarize yourself with this area, and you guys put in the work by making those visits. Now, of course, a large part of the business plan, or a big part of the business plan, implementing the business plan, is the property managers. So if one of you want to talk about the the prior property manager, if you kept them on, or did you have a plan for a new property manager group, and how did you connect with them?
I'm gonna take this. Yeah, you want to take it, Ryan?
You can take it.
So we initially had the plan of keeping that, retaining that property manager. And we thought, you know, they were number one, they were one of the larger players in the market, if not the largest player in Louisville. They had something like 4,500 units there locally. Unfortunately, the decision was kind of made for us in the midst of us doing due diligence. They came to us and said, hey, you know, this is kind of smaller, doesn't meet our requirements in terms of the size of the property, as well as the owner was divesting from a number of other properties. And kind of the only reason that the economics of this worked for them was because they were able to get one large portfolio of smaller properties. So, you know, I think in retrospect, it was kind of a good thing, because as our due diligence got underway, we saw a ton of evidence that they were kind of asleep at the wheel. I think part of it was the prior owner had switched property managers. And so they were just kind of biding time until the sale went through. And so we in a very short order had to interview other property managers, you know, screen them and select one. Like I said, it ended up being a good thing, because I think the property managers that we have is a lot more nimble, a lot more hungry to get our business. And so that was the process there. But again, going back to my prior comment, we wouldn't have known how to do that if we hadn't been through the process of doing that in prior markets.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. We had our checklists already made. We had the questions all there. We just pretty much had to find 3 to 5 property managers, interview them, hit them with those questions. And from there, we were able to really select a great property manager that we have on board now. And we're just very excited to have them on there, because they're just killing it with assisting us with the initial CapEx that we've recently started about a week ago.
Yeah, and one thing to add, which I didn't mention, what Gonzalo brought up, is we have a you know, a pretty good size value add business plan on this property. So we wanted to ensure, the most important thing to us was that they could manage or help be our eyes and ears, you know, boots on the ground for that business plan. They'd experienced kind of doing what we're looking to do. So part of our normal vetting is always talking to other clients of theirs, other clients of the property manager. I would recommend anybody looking into a new market, when you talk to property managers, get their references and talk to those references, and even see if those references have references with them, because you never know. It could be somebody's family, you know, brother, sister, whatever. And then we asked them specifically, you know, what was the business plan that they managed? Did they manage a similar CapEx, you know, strategy as we're looking to do? And sure enough, they did. So we were comfortable moving forward with them.
And if you feel like, anybody on this call, if you feel like you need to switch property managers, if they're not performing at their best and how you think they should be, I would just say that you should remember that the property manager is probably the most valuable person on your team, them and their team. And they are, especially for out-of-state owners, they're keeping that asset alive and making sure it's performing its best. And you're asset managing them. So you're kind of managing the manager. So although it is a huge pain to switch property managers, if you feel like there's a need and you can find someone, vet somebody out that's good in that market, it's well worth it. We've had to do it in Hickory, and now we just did it here, although we did not work with that other manager for very long. It's worth the process.
How are you guys going to manage the go forward meetings? How are you going to deliverables? How are you keeping track of these?
We have a couple meetings set up with different people at the property manager. This management company is set up in slightly different than other ones that I've worked with. So they have basically somebody doing turns, somebody doing CapEx, somebody doing accounting, leasing, etc. So we have different calls typically on a bi-weekly basis with each of these different groups to make sure that we're where we want to be with our business plan. And then of course, email correspondences going out pretty often, especially on things like CapEx, where Don and Gonzalo are more involved, talking through literal, like going through our leasing, our plan with who we want to keep, what we want to raise this rent to, what kind of water fee do we want to add. We're going through each of these details, and much of it actually goes back to the initial due diligence that we did on the property. Not that we're following it to the T, because there are things that come up and you can't always get rid of a certain tenant, or something happens and maybe they left on their own, but we're following our plan that we set up, and then working with the manager to ensure that it happens, and hopefully happens better than we expected.
Just one thing that I will add is since this property manager, they do have individual people that are in charge of different divisions. So the person that Don and I kind of deal with mostly is the person that's in charge of helping us with the capital expenditures, what needs to be upgraded, lawn cutting services, things like that. So we coordinate with her and we get that done, versus what Ryan and Mark, they deal more maybe on the tenant side, the turn side, leases, things like that. So we each have kind of our tasks, our duties to do. And obviously we get together and we make overall decisions with everybody on kind of what direction we want to do with things. But as far as the making it as easy as possible to not really cross communicate, Don and I would be in charge of a certain division versus Ryan and Mark for another, which is making it pretty easy.
Yeah, just to add in terms of systems, we use Asana as well, which we got to thank Miguel for being the resident project manager. So for anybody that's, from the project management space, or maybe you're not, and you're just getting into the space, highly recommend Asana or Trello. There are a bunch of products out there that you can use for free off the shelf.
Monday.com is another one that's popular.
Awesome. So yeah, listen, there's 20 of us on here. So if anyone has a question, feel free to just jump on. You could type it, or you could just jump off your microphone and ask the question right now. It's pretty wide open Q&A, and I know everyone that's in here. So if there's any other questions, just jump right in.
So no one's asking questions, Jerry, so I'll be the one to kind of hop in here, but I do just want to state an overall comment, right? I've worked in project management, IT for many, many years. And one of the most important things is team dynamics, people being open to feedback, having a range of experience, and kind of managing everyone's expectations or people's perspectives, and kind of being open to that. This team is really special that way. I don't know if it's by chance or we just connected and vibed off each other, but the team is really special in the way that everyone's open to feedback, everyone's open to processes, to kind of setting things up that allow the team to be really successful. And that's one of the things that I was really impressed on early on by just the whole team dynamics, is that you hear of the success, you hear of all the different ups and downs, and the impressive thing was how they were able to build through that or work through any of those issues as a team, and how important that is in scaling and growing. So I think team dynamics, I think a quote from them is real estate is a team sport, and it definitely is a team and networking sport.
I think too, it doesn't hurt that we're all, in this for the long term. I mean, everybody on the GP side, we're all kind of aligned in that way. So, while this was our first deal working together, I have no doubt that we'll be working together on future deals. I think that's kind of shaped a lot of what we do. If it's a lesson that we have to learn, and, there's something that we have to take away, we'll jot it down and we'll, come back to it as a group. We're constantly documenting different things that we're doing, because we know that this won't be the last time that we'll do it. And that's, I guess, why I'm a little bit neurotic with the to-do list.
So, it kind of brings up a great point about, setting up, process procedures that are repeatable, and everything you do, you're going to learn. And then we're looking to do this again. How about leading into this? There's so much out there: information, education, coaching, mentorships. How much did that help? As you went through this process.
Well, I can say for me, Ryan and I did mentorship, coaching, and when he talked about the boot camp, it wasn't just one boot camp, it was 12 to 14 boot camps, and each one was a long weekend. So it was a lot of education, but it was worth it. It was worth it when it's something you really like to do, and you see the light at the end of the tunnel that you can make nice money at it. It's worth it.
That's true. Very, very, very true. And I got to ask this question because, obviously, for many of us or who are interested in becoming active as operators are still, in a W-2, still working in their own job or whatever. And I would say it's almost impossible for one person to do all this. So I don't know where all of you are in your, if you moved into that full time or W-2. I know, at least 3 or 4 are still working on your W-2. How much did that help, having other partners that overlaid and could pick, could handle, I can't make this phone call. I have to do something for work, something like that. Like, how much does that make a difference?
Well, I could say for one thing, it was huge, especially I don't really have too much access to a computer during the day. And between, Gonzalo and Mark and Ryan, luckily they were able to help out more in this area, like on these closing documents. Oh my goodness, you got to get this done. You got to get this done. And that was huge.
Yeah, I would say every week it was, even every day during this process, it was very helpful to have a team of guys that we could trust and that were dependable and that we knew would get these tasks done. Many of them do have a timeline, especially towards the end. That timeline is exponentially small, it feels. So it's really nice to have multiple people that, as Mark said, we're all in it for the long haul. So although this is a single project that we all worked on, I think knowing that we all want to do this for a very long time, we all try to perform to our best with each of these little things that pop up. So very helpful to have additional people. It'd be extremely difficult to do it by yourself.
I think that's one of the things too that, in addition to what I said earlier, as far as capital raising and somebody who had experience before, we knew that we would need more hands on deck, myself and Gonzalo, in the beginning, because of the fact that, there's just so much going on, so much to be done prior to even getting to closing table, that, I would, if it's your first deal that you're looking at, I would absolutely stress the idea that don't be afraid to give up equity in order to get it across the finish line. Because, part of any deal is better than, 100% of no deal.
Right.
Yeah, and I totally agree, right? 1% of something is better than 0% of nothing, right? So like I stated, it's a team sport. I think there's a question in the chat about any advice for a newbie. So I think I'm going to take that one. My advice is to just realize what you believe your strengths are, but more importantly, just talking to everyone you know about this. When you start getting around like-minded people and you start taking action, you start educating yourself, the opportunities will present themselves. And, like I said, I'm lucky to be part of these group of guys, but we surround ourselves. Jerry's one of them with the job he's doing on with the meetups, right? And Garrett's on, and there's a bunch of people in our group that we make sure we keep in constant communication with. We hold each other accountable, and we're all moving in the same direction. And when you get around those people and that energy, it'll really just, start building momentum, and you get one in front of the other, and things will really start opening up. So that's my 2 cents in terms of how you get started if you're a new person.
Nice.
Yeah,
I'll definitely add to that, Miguel, for sure, that what you just mentioned is so important. Like, just surrounding yourself with the type of people that have kind of like the similar goals that you do, right? So going to these events, networking, going out to coffee, to people who have a vision of, reaching financial independence someday, being GP, a part owner of I've never thought I would ever be a part owner of a 32, let alone a duplex or something, right? Apartment complex, but it's all just due to, hard work, networking, and just kind of like surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and have the same goals as you do. So.
Yeah, I would say also it's just, especially with this stuff, you got to remember that it's the long game that matters. Most people aren't gonna just say I want to do this and then a month or a couple months later have a property that's of any substantial size. It really does take a lot of work, a lot of upfront work, and a lot of things that, like, you put in a lot of hours. I think everybody on this call can say you put in a lot of hours that no one's ever going to see you do, between, investor touches and broker touches and underwriting and everything else that goes into it. So you just have to know that you're going to look at a million things before something actually works out typically.
Yeah, and that also brings to the conversation, the acquisition fees and things, like the amount of work that goes into this, that I don't, not everyone has a full understanding. It's a great point. Hey, Sean, I saw you had a question and raise a hand. I'll put you on up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks guys for sharing. We know a lot of markets are really competitive right now. You guys have any nuggets around any or points of interest around winning the deal? Any interesting stories around that?
Yeah, so speaking candidly, we haven't, technically speaking, bid against anybody to win a deal. This was off market. So as far as best and final advice or anything like that, where it's kind of something on the open market, I really can't speak to that, to be honest with you, because we haven't been successful in that end. Yeah.
So I haven't closed the deal, but as cap rates kind of press here and things get worse, the only nugget I can share is that you have to get really, really great at asset management, right? That's where you are able to save or see some of the changes and some of the prices they're asking for. Example, this deal here, the team implemented some amazing water savings, and our CapEx budget is, it was big and it's changing and morphing into aligning more with what the area and market are demanding. And there's just other items like that where asset management really can help you with the competitiveness of the market. The other thing is you have to get really creative. I think I mentioned today that, we were talking before we hopped on this deal in terms of how do we offer amenities in an area that doesn't have it. And we suggested kind of partnering with local gyms and pools, right? Me and being in New Jersey, right, I kind of have this issue on a regular basis. We're looking at only units that have basements so we can offer storage or expansion of garages and parking lots. There's the whole idea of how you add a cell tower, but you need to get creative and really understand your market and understand some of the newer ways to actually master your market so that you can get competitive with these offers and kind of be in the forefront of being able to make a deal work.
Yeah, just to add on that, I would agree. It's like many of these markets, if not everywhere right now, it's just ultra competitive. So, and we've gotten outbid on, I don't even know how many deals at this point over the past 2 years or so. But one of the things that we at least try to do is to, even if we can't beat them on price, we're hoping that we have a decent relationship, a good enough relationship with the broker who is listing it, that they trust us, that they know we've closed on other properties, hopefully in that same market. Again, that we know the market really well. So even before putting in that offer, we have every little savings that we can put in there while still knowing that it's semi-conservative, that we're going to hit these returns. And then if you can stand out with shorter terms and things like that, if you think that you can do it on that property, that will also make you stand out and possibly win you the deal. But it's very tricky right now. Yeah. it's hard.
I think definitely speed will help, there's surety of close, like Ryan mentioned, there's kind of mastering the asset management side and being able to provide value to make maybe the deal pencil out that somebody else couldn't otherwise. And then I also think like speed in some cases matters, being able to just underwrite more deals basically faster than everybody else so you can make more offers. That's another strategy that you can kind of try to employ, whether it's outsourcing that or bringing a partner on that can do that.
Yeah, and that's mastering your market. So, yeah.
I think you also got to stick to your, your numbers and your guns, and you underwrite something, don't overpay it. That's probably one of the most important things, right?
Yeah, I agree. You don't want to get yourself into a sticky situation. You're going to be involved with the property for multiple years. So if it doesn't pencil out, don't get involved.
Here goes a good
Move
one.
on, tell the broker why you're moving on and hope they give you something that works next time.
So Howard asked, are you guys direct marketing to sellers?
Jerry, I think that's a question for you.
Yeah. It's in the works, and that is that's the next plan. The key with that is creating systems and processes where it becomes repeatable, right? So you can build the list. There's a lot of resources out there, whether it's CoStar or obviously some of those are more expensive, but then you have the list. What do you do with it, right? So you have to make sure that you have this is not with single family might be a little bit easier because you're obviously calling we all get those phone calls where they're trying to buy your house, but all these properties are purchased in LLCs. You have to be able to pierce that to get out to the correct owner. So there's a process. It's called skip tracers that will get you down to potentially the actual owner. So the answer to that is like that's in works, but we are making sure, like everything else, there's a process in place that we can get out letters to the list, make phone calls to that list, repeat it, and you end up touching some of these same owners a couple of times. You don't know when you catch them at the end of the year, they're tired of that building, or they're tired, their kids don't want the building. It starts from a relationship. So we want to be able to have that in place and be able to repeat and go at it.
Yeah, one thing that Mark and I did initially when we did our first trip to to Nashville is obviously first work order was really meeting the brokers and sitting down with them with the relationship we built probably 4 months prior, and actually meeting them face to face. And then after we kind of like made that initial step, our relationship with the brokers got a little bit closer. Hey, these guys really made an investment to go out to, from New Jersey at the time, fly there, get to know the market. And then from that point, we started, driving some of these tertiary markets outside of Nashville, because we knew Nashville was very competitive. So we started visiting some towns south, north of Nashville, Clarksville, Columbia. And we noted multifamily assets that we kind of drove through. We pinned them. And then once we kind of knew, hey, this is a big cluster of multifamily in this area, we reached out to the brokers that we met, and we developed some sort of broker opinion of value, or BOV is what they call it. And we started working on that. They would deliver the BOV to that seller. And we did get a couple of hits as far as one seller was going through a current divorce. He couldn't deal, with the whole selling of his property at the moment. So we're still staying on top of that person. And the idea is to hopefully catch him at the right time, right, where he's ready, and then we're there with our face, and potentially would be an opportunity for us to maybe go a little bit deeper in that quote that the BOV was sent out by the broker. So things like that we really have to start jumping back on as soon as we get this asset kind of a little bit more stabilized and looking for our next property.
Awesome. So it's 8:40. We've done well. Leave some time for breakout rooms. Unless anybody has one last final stump question that they want to get these guys on, we'll set it up to go into breakout rooms. But if you guys have any final comments before we go, I appreciate you coming on. This was great. Again, just there's a roadmap out there. So it's good to see that, see others that are going forward. And I think, we follow those processes that have been set forth and stick to it. It's a long game for sure.
Jerry, you mind if I jump in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of nail home what exactly the last sentence that you said, and we've kind of brought it up multiple times throughout this, but, really take the long view. This is not something where you're going to get rich, as all of us know, it's not something where you can get rich overnight. One deal, while it can have tremendous effects in the long term on your wealth, it's not going to make you rich overnight. So if you just constantly take that view that I'm going to be in this for the long haul, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, however long, I think it'll make kind of the, rejection of LOIs and, going to the market and things like that a lot easier to swallow. I kind of think that like while it's not a get rich overnight, it's as close to a sure thing as possible in terms of long-term wealth generation. So the name of the game is just constantly asking yourself, how can you improve and get better? I mean, I know speaking for myself and Gonzalo, like, just 2.5 years ago, we didn't really know anything about multifamily. I mean, we had done a duplex, triplex, the small stuff, but we really didn't know how this world worked. I would just say it doesn't happen overnight. Stick at it every day, set up, goals for yourself to get you there. And like we said earlier,